My name is Russell, owner of Shedscape. Today we're going to talk about how to build quality sheds that last a lifetime. So the three things that you want to consider before buying a shed, for one, is the design of the shed, two would be the placement, and then lastly, the local regulation for where you can place your shed. So when designing your shed, you really want to consider what exactly you're going to be using it for. Is it something that you're planning on storing a vehicle in? Is it something that you just need to put some yard tools in? So depending on exactly the use, you want to think about how wide the door might need to be, how deep the shed might need to be to accommodate a vehicle if that's what you're planning on using it for. You also might want to consider if you need a ramp in order to drive the vehicle into the shed. Other things to consider is the siding material. If you live in an HOA neighborhood, a lot of HOAs require that the shed at least matches in color. Some HOAs might require that the shed siding matches the siding of your house. So that's another design feature that you might want to think about when you're considering the type of shed that you're trying to get. When placing your shed, you want to make sure that it's positioned in a way to where the best features of the shed are visible from your house, or the most common viewing angles of your shed. Okay, so this is going to be a 10 by 12 shed. We're coming 10 feet out from the fence and then 12 feet down. We need at minimum 2 feet of clearance from any obstacle in order to build. And in this case, the customer wants as close to the fence as we can. So we're basically going to come off 2 feet off the fence and then another 10 feet that way. So what I do is we grab these stakes. I just measure off 2 feet and plant my stake. And I use these vinyl tapes. Just put the tape on the stake. Come down 12 more feet from that stake. And make sure I'm 2 feet off the fence, which is right there. Then from here, we'll draw a diagonal from that stake to this one. So we pull our tape from here, and then from there we got our diagonal at 15 feet, 7.5 inches. Let me plant our stake right there. And essentially we just do the same thing for that last stake, and that gives us our where our footers are being placed. We're going to dig for the footer locations. Basically, we just want to dig out enough of this organic material to where the footer is sitting on flat ground. We'll fill it in with a little bit of pea gravel, level it out, set the footer on, and then we're ready to start setting our band boards. So having done this a lot of times, I pretty much know kind of the perimeter that I need to dig out for these footers. Essentially where I put that corner stake is where the corner of the band board is going to lay, which is about right here. So I want to make sure I clear enough space around that whole footing for it to sit. We have a little bit of wiggle room if we need to move the shed around just a little bit.
One of the biggest selling features of our sheds is that we build our floor framing like a standalone deck. Tuffblock footings make it really easy for us to build the floor framing because they're very lightweight, easy to carry around, and install very simply. It really helps to speed up our build time and save money for our customers.
So essentially at this point, we have all of our footer locations marked out. We have put down pea gravel, compacted it, and kind of set out the footers roughly where they're gonna go. What we do is we identify the high point of the yard, and this is it. So from here, it slopes down that way and it slopes down this way. So this will be our high point. So we wanna start setting this footer here. And then from there, we will level out the band board and start setting the footers where they need to go, so that way we have a level frame. So this here it's about 7 inches, a little more than 7 inches from the top of the Tuffblock to the top of our band boards. So we're going to cut out a post that's that high, then we're going to notch it so that way the band board sits on top of the post all the way around. And so we're going to do that with all of these footings as we move around. And obviously this will be the shortest footing because that's the high point. As we go along, we'll get a little bit taller and taller, and that will be the tallest end back there in the back corner. Okay, so at this point we have our band boards set out. We put our footing on the high point and leveled out the rest of the band boards using scrap wood to kind of hold it in place where it needs to be. So at this point now what we're doing is we're going to cut for each footing, install them all, and then after the footings are in, it's time to put in the joists. So in laying out the band boards and the joists, what we want to do is make sure that we pick up the board and sight down the top ridge of it to see if it's crowning. Because a lot of times with lumber, you'll have either a crown or a bow. We can deal with the small crown. If it's a small crown, we will use it, just make sure it's facing up. If the band board is badly crowned and it's pretty bad, we probably won't even use it at all. But in this case, in this board, as we're trying to level around, we discovered there's just a little bit of a crown. It's not huge, you can barely even see it, but with the level, when you put the level on, you can see that we're getting that side level and then this side level, but something is always off with this, and that's kind of how we figured out that, okay, there's a little bit of a crown on this spot, causing it not to get perfectly level around. So we got it as level as we can, make sure the crown is up, and then over time, as weight is sitting on this area, it'll help to kind of level it down to be more level with everything else. These are basically our top and bottom plates. We've already marked them out and they're ready to go. The doors that we build for the shed are built out of 4x8 wall panels. So, and the panels are 4 feet wide by 8 feet tall. So in this case, the door, the center of the door where the two doors meet together is going to be at 4 feet. So that's why we mark the door center at 4 feet. And then depending on how big the door is, you want the king stud to be further than the door by about 3/4 inches on each side. That way it allows us to cut the door out after that wall is raised. And then after it's raised and we cut out the door, then we put the jack studs in, which covers that gap where we cut out the door. So after we have the door figured out where that needs to go, then we need to figure out where the window goes. In this case, we want the window centered between the end of the building and the right side of the door. So we also want to make sure that we're spacing our studs every 24 inches because there's a groove on our panels every 8 inches, so every 24 we can hit into a groove. In this case, we need a stud right where that window would go. So we'd use that stud as our right side of the window, and then we'd space out the width of the window within that stud. And then after we have the door placed and then where the window's placed, then at that point we'll just mark every 24 inches to see if there's a gap where we need to put a stud, and then we'll mark those as well. That's how we mark out the front wall. All right, right, so here we're going to show you how to lift up a wall by yourself if you're a single builder working by yourself. Essentially what we have is a couple blocks up front against the band boards. That's to help as I lift up the wall. It gives you something to kind of stop against so it doesn't slide off of the platform. You don't always need those. It just depends on how quickly you can get the wall up. But it's very easy, especially the heavy wall. If you're lifting it, it starts sliding on you. So we just put those up there as a way to make sure it doesn't slide. You also want to make sure that your nail gun is nearby, because once you get this up, if you're fishing for your nail gun, you're going to be kind of in a world of hurt trying to balance a wall and trying to find your nail gun. So we always put it next to where it's easier to grab. So on this end, we put a block underneath the top plate, so I can bend down and grab the top plate. But essentially I'm just going to do a power squat. I'm going to squat down, and then with all my might, with bent knees, lift up and try to get up as fast as possible, and then stand it up. So now that we got it up, we just want to make sure that we're nice and flush with the band board, which we are. And we're tight in against the front bend boards, which we are. So at this point, we'll nail it off. And then now I just want to make sure we pull in the center. You push in. And that's essentially it. I'll put more nails down next to the studs, but that's how we get the wall up. So at this point, we have our sidewalls up and sheathed, and now we have this gable wall framed up and ready to go. At this point, we need to talk about a couple concepts, and that is the relationship between level, plumb, and square. So we spent a lot of time leveling the floor framing. Level is horizontal, right? So we got it as level as we possibly can with a little bit of crowning in some of the members that makes it so that way you can't perfectly tell if it's level, but we have it as level as you possibly can get it with a little bit of that crowning. Now, I know this sounds sacrilegious to a lot of people, but when it comes to a shed, I don't worry about plumbing the walls. Plumbing is vertically making it straight. And the reason is because I've leveled the platform. If I plumb the walls and put this square panel on there and it doesn't fit square, what we're going to have is a lot of other issues that are going to appear throughout the entire shed. So at that point, once we level the floor framing, I don't concern myself with being plumb this way. And that's just because if this is level and I put this on square, then the wall should be plumb or as close to plumb as possible. So at this point in time, what we do is that after we get the sidewalls up, we want to make sure that we paint everything before any trim or overhangs go on. It just makes it a lot easier in the end. Instead of trying to brush cut around everything, we can just roll paint now. So before we even come out to the job site, we typically try to paint the panels at least one coat. The door panels we actually paint 2 coats, everything else we'll paint 1 coat. Because during transportation, a lot of times they might get scuffed up, and also we're shooting nails and staples into them. So that this way, after you get the wall up, I can paint a 2nd coat. It covers everything else up, covers all the nail holes, covers up all the scuffs, and just turns out looking a lot better. When I start painting the sidewalls, I actually do a horizontal pattern down towards the bottom because that reduces the chances of me accidentally touching the band board with the roller. If I come straight down, it's very easy to accidentally touch the band board. So I'll instead do 1 coat horizontally across the bottom, and then I'll do my vertical paint strokes going down close to the bottom. That way I can cover everything without messing anything up.
Next, we install the trusses, the overhangs, the roof sheathing, the felt, and then the drip edge. It's a lot easier to mark the roof OSB every 24 inches prior to installing it so that we can line up the trusses with your marks.
So here we are about to shingle the shed. What we wanted to point out here is how we layer all the materials to make sure that water will shed off of the building and not cause any problems. If you might notice, we have roofing felt overlapping lower levels of felt. We have this felt overlapping this felt, and then this felt is overlapping the drip edge, and we have this drip edge overlapping the felt. So that way, once it rains or water comes on the shed, it will come off without getting stuck in anything. And the same thing with the siding material. As the siding material comes down, it overlaps the floor framing material, so that way the water will just shed off and not become an issue.
It's important to snap chalk lines when shingling to make sure that they line up straight.
So to recap, today we learned how to build a quality shed that will last a lifetime. We learned about shed design and location. We learned how to install your footings, how to install walls, and little tricks to succeed as a solo or DIY builder.
Thank you so much and good luck on your next build.